How's everybody doing? Hey, if you found this channel, then you were not alone. This is channel that deals with addiction and recovery. And what I like to do is I like to bring on a guest to share their story or their lead, however you want to look at it. And let me introduce myself. I'm Sid Page, and I'm an addict.
Hey, Sid.
Hey, Red, how are you? I want to introduce you to everybody who's listening.
And I'm Red. I'm an alcoholic addict as well.
Red, I'm glad you could be here today. I know we had some technical difficulties getting this ball rolling, but I think our ball's rolling now. So I just made the introduction, and whenever you're ready, whenever you're comfortable, everyone wants to hear your story.
All right. Well, the way I was always taught this by my sponsor was that you share what it was like while you were in your addiction, then you tell what happened to make you hit your rock bottom, and then you tell what it's like now that you are sober.
Okay.
So that's what we'll do here. Try not to get in too much of a drunk-a-log or using log, you know.
Right.
It's more for reaching out than entertainment. So basically, I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I started drinking. I had my first drink when I was 13. And basically, I just had some friends who had some older friends who, we all know the story, bought us some alcohol. We threw in and paid for theirs, so they were able to get ours for us. And we had an old construction site out by my house. I lived in a small town outside of Toms River. And basically, we would go back there, and that's where we kind of partied. That's kind of where we hung out. And I'm talking like pre-alcohol party. You know, we used to just go out there, have bonfires, just be kids, you know. And then a friend of mine had a buddy who did a lot of drinking. I guess his parents did a lot of drinking. So, you know, we decided we were going to do some drinking.
Yeah, why not at that age? 13's a
Yeah,
age
ripe
of discovery.
ripe old age of discovery.
When you're 6 foot tall, bulletproof, and you're going to live forever.
Yeah, basically. And really, at that point, I was 4'8" and weighed 92 pounds.
Okay.
So, yeah. Anyway, we wound up getting some beer, and they got some alcohol. I just wanted they got some hard liquor. I just wanted beer. Basically, I drank 4 12-ounce Budweisers, and basically that was all it took. When I first took my first few sips, I was kind of like, man, yeah, this stuff doesn't taste very good. But then the alcohol started kicking in. And so I started drinking it quicker. And by the time I popped my third can, I was already completely buzzed. But the thing was, when this buzz came on, it was almost like, somebody parted the clouds and the angels started singing, because it was like I had found an answer to my problem. And like I said, at 13 years old, I'm 4'8", 92 pounds. I live in New Jersey. You know, short, skinny, redhead kid with freckles and pale skin. You know, you can imagine I fought for everything I did.
I'm at New Jersey, absolutely.
So, you know, and it was just, you know, the place is not a bad place. It's just very small and it's very congested.
Well, it's just a tough area.
Yeah, it really is.
Tough state or
Yeah.
city.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun growing up in. But anyway, so once I felt this feeling, it was like the answer to my problem. So I had never felt like that before. It made me feel like I fit in. It made me feel tough. It made me feel free. It made me feel great. Made me feel like I could almost fly. I remember jumping off a couple of the cliffs out there because I was obviously intoxicated by that point, and I really didn't have too much sense in what I was doing. But
You found your happy place
that was it.
through the alcohol use.
That's absolutely it.
Comfort zone.
Yes. And so after that, and I couldn't figure out how anybody would not want, like, especially adults that were legally allowed to do it, how come they didn't do it all the time? Because if it made you feel this good, why would you not want to feel this good all the time?
Yeah, everybody else is missing out on this.
Yeah, it was almost like I was, unique. So anyway, I stumble home along with my other buddies, and when I get there, I found out I couldn't hold my liquor very well because I climbed into bed thinking I got away with it until it all hit me at once that I was very sick.
Okay.
And I couldn't even turn over to roll off the bed to go to the bathroom before I puked all over my wall, my bed. You know, you get the picture. But so about that time, because my parents' room was adjacent to mine, my mom happened to be walking by and heard me puking and came in and was just, and she could smell it. She's like, "Oh my God, are you kidding me? You're drunk? You're 13 and you're drunk?" And I'm just like, "Oh boy." So, needless to say, I got grounded literally for about a month. I got my butt beat, and because my mom was kind of our disciplinarian.
Okay.
So my dad, he worked, the fabled 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, but he really did. He worked for a factory in Jersey, and basically that's how we got to Indiana, but I'll explain that later.
All right.
But so she was the one who, she was like a professional with a belt and
So she was
ping
the
pong paddle.
disciplinarian.
Yes, and she was very, very aggressive and very good at it. So anyway, I get grounded for the month. I still had 8 beers left out in the woods, and I remembered exactly where I stashed them because, like I said, this was the answer to my problems.
Sure.
I could not believe there was something that would make me feel that great.
Right.
I mean, yeah, okay, I started feeling sick afterwards, but I thought, when I get out of here and I get back to them 8 beers, I'll just drink 2 instead of 4, and I'll be okay.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
But I'll still feel good.
Yeah.
So I get off grounding. I wind up going back out there and doing exactly that, except it didn't really work out. I drank 2, and then I thought, well, I can have 3. I can have 4. Then I blacked out. I actually passed out there. That was something that it took me a little while to think about after I started doing leads again. I started really remembering my past and thinking about it, and basically, I reflect on it a lot deeper now. And that was something I do remember because people had asked me, well, when do you remember getting your first blackout drunk? And I thought it was when I was 16, but I'm wrong.
Okay.
I actually passed out in the woods that day. Luckily, I went out early enough that when I started drinking, it was before noon. And by the time I was waking up to get ready to stumble home, it was about I remember it was dark, so it was after 8 o'clock, but I made it in before curfew. My curfew was 10 when I was a kid. So I didn't get caught that time. And my drinking just progressed and progressed. Then I started getting into liquor, and I remember a friend of mine and me stole a 45-year-old bottle of Puerto Rican rum out of my grandfather's cabinet. And he had that sitting there for I don't know how long, but it was a very expensive bottle of liquor. But I stole it, took it with us. We dumped out the contents of a 1-gallon orange juice bottle, and we left just about maybe about a quarter of it in there just so it would give some flavor to this stuff so that way we could stomach it.
Right.
Well, we dumped the whole bottle in there with it, and we actually did. We really did drink that whole thing in about a little over 3 hours. We just kept chugging it, passing it back and forth, and I mean, it tasted awful, but we were feeling incredible.
Sure.
Now we were invincible.
So you had stolen this from your grandfather.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're still, what, 13, 14?
At this point, I was 14.
14.
Yeah, I should have elaborated on that a little. Yeah, this was about a year later after I started. I was a freshman in high school, and by the time we got back to my grandfather's house, because they had this woods down the house or down the street from his house that we went to drink it. By the time I got back to his house, I don't really remember anything. I do remember being woken up in and out of consciousness in my mom's van, and I guess she said I was puking out the window, and I was incoherent, and got me to the hospital, and it wound up I had alcohol poisoning, and basically the cops showed up because it was a minor, who had alcohol poisoning. So they wanted to come in and question my mom and, find out why I was drunk. My dad showed up to question him, wanted to know if it was their liquor, if I drank it at the house, if they gave it to me. You know what I mean? Because some parents do that.
Sure. So
Not
now
mine.
you've inadvertently, through obtaining alcohol poisoning, and you've inadvertently gotten your parents in trouble with the police.
Yeah, basically,
Okay.
because luckily my uncle's a cop. So when my dad mentioned his name and said,
Ah.
listen, you ask him what kind of parents we are to George. And they were like, okay, well, whatever. We'll check it. And they did check. They actually did call my uncle and asked him about it. And, he was like, listen, he's been kind of a problem kid for, the past year now. He's
Yeah.
been getting himself into, drinking. They're not sure if he's doing drugs. He's just, in and out. When he does come in, he's unapproachable
Hmm.
and, he's getting really aggressive. So,
It's just a phase.
yeah. Like what any parent who doesn't really want to do what their problem kid says. So,
Yeah, exactly.
they gave my parents a choice. They said, okay, well, we're going to give you two choices because we do have a minor here who's very intoxicated. He's to the point of alcohol poisoning.
Okay.
And they said, we're either going to let you put him in a rehabilitation facility or we're putting him in juvenile detention.
So now you have a
Because,
choice. You're going to
yeah,
rehab or you're going to go to jail, juvenile
yeah,
detention.
yeah, because either which way they said he's got to sober up. Like,
Okay.
and so thank God my parents chose the
Yeah.
rehabilitation
Yes.
because, yeah, I wasn't real excited about having to go to Jamesburg.
Oh no. Oh no.
So, so I go to this rehabilitation facility. I'm there for 10 days and 11 nights. I got there the one night and then they kept me there for 10 following days.
Okay.
And I mean, it really wasn't rehabilitation. They basically, it was like a babysitting service, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
for young teenage kids. And, they charge the insurance ridiculous amounts of money, you know what I mean?
Of
So that's
course.
basically what it was about, a racket, a legal
A legal
racket.
racket.
And they locked you in on the top floor of this hospital. And, there was only one way in, one way out, and it was the elevator. And they
Hmm.
had a key, and they locked it to make sure no kids could get in there and get out.
So this is a detox rehabilitation entitled only facility, and it's what, get you guys up, get you fed,
Yeah,
draw pictures, maybe
yeah,
have a
pretty
meet.
much. And
Okay.
they let us have free range of the TVs there. And basically, I spent most of my time with a couple of the other guys there, and it was a girl guy facility,
Uh-huh.
so there were things going on in the bathroom, with the
Oh.
guys and the girls. And I mean, basically, the guards didn't come to check because they figured, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean? They're
Mm-hmm.
not drinking, they're not drugging.
Right.
So I remember spending a lot of my time though looking out the window, watching people down on the next tier smoking.
Okay.
Like because I'm a kid and smoking was cool. You
Sure.
know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I wanted one because at that point I had started smoking. I did pretty much everything when I was 13. That's the first time I smoked a cigarette. First time, that's when I lost my virginity, and
Mm-hmm.
that's also when I took my first drink.
Okay.
So the summer after my eighth grade year was like a huge year for me. You know what I mean? It was like the breakthrough to many different pathways, if
Mm-hmm.
that's what you want to call it. But
Explored avenues.
yeah, pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. You're better with words than I am, but
You're doing fine.
but so anyway, I get out of this facility and I don't really do anything different. I actually got into drugs a little heavier. Like Angel Dust was real big in Jersey at the time, like because
Okay.
they had the Ringling Brothers, Barnum Bailey Circus would come around and
Yeah.
that they would get the elephant tranquilizer and whatever else they put in the thing. And
Oh man.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
mean, New York was 2.5 hour drive,
Okay.
and of course we had the buddy who drove, you know what I
Sure.
mean? So, and as long as we gave him gas money and some of the, stuff, he
Yeah.
would give us a ride there.
Right.
But, so, I got into that stuff. I wound up staying out of trouble for a little while, but, excuse me,
You're all right.
as me and my friends picked up with our addictions, though, we got more into marijuana, then we got into cocaine, then we
Mm-hmm.
were doing acid. I mean, it was just basically just one thing led to the next. But I always went back to drinking because those other drugs were cool. They felt cool. The LSD was psychedelic,
Oh yeah.
but the whole thing was I never had anything make me feel as like, I guess, huge in life as drinking did.
Okay.
Alcohol was like my best friend.
That was your
you know.
go-to now.
Yes,
Yeah.
alcohol was everything to me. It was the answer to my problems, like I said.
Right.
Because by this point, I hadn't had hangovers yet. I hadn't really, I got sick when I was younger, but as we progressed, let's fast forward a little bit. By the time I got into my senior year, I was 5'10" and weighed 155. So I like gained another person in high school.
All right.
People used to joke with me and say, "Would you eat somebody or what?"
Right.
But so I was able to handle a lot more alcohol and, basically handle myself a lot better. Not when I was on alcohol, but,
Right.
But I mean, as far as like, I fit into more crowds now because I was more normal. I wasn't like a midget.
Well, acceptance is really important at that age. I mean, you need to find your clique, your crew, the group.
Absolutely.
That will
Yes.
accept you and you're comfortable in. So
Yeah. And so basically, we'll go to the part here where it really started getting bad. I wound up getting kicked out of my house because I was coming home drunk, and finally I just, was getting to the point where I would do it on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
When I would walk through the door, I would make it blatantly obvious, and I would make it like I didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so my parents were just like, look. And by this time, my parents had another set of children. So same parents, just that my mother had gotten pregnant very young with my older brother at 16, and then 17 with me.
A year apart.
Yeah.
All right.
And then years later, they decide I was in 7th grade when Johnny was born.
All right.
And then I was, what was I? Believe I was a sophomore. Yeah, I was. I was a sophomore when my other brother came along.
All right.
So, my parents had like 2 sets of kids. It was kind of like okay, well, the first kids were our trial run. Now we're going to do it right, man. So anyway, but that was a big reason why they really didn't want me around the house anymore. I was toxic to not only them, but I was toxic to my younger brothers because, they're watching me acting like an idiot and, being disrespectful. And, my parents didn't want me passing that on to them.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because none of us understood that alcoholism and addiction is actually a disease. It's not just like,
So at this point, you're not exactly a role model.
No.
For a little brother
not
looking
for, yeah.
Okay.
No, I wasn't a very good big brother.
All right.
So when they kicked me out, I went to live with, at that point, it was my cousin. My cousin, actually, my aunt and uncle didn't want to see me going out on the street, of course.
Of course.
So let me come stay with them. And I wound up a week into living with my aunt and uncle. I was up at the bowling alley that was right across from this construction site, and I got into an argument with a guy. And when we go into the bowling alley, we'd bring those pints of Southern Comfort with us.
Uh-huh.
We call them back pocket bottles.
Okay.
And we go in there and we play pinball. And so I remember they had this cool Who's Tommy pinball machine. Mm-hmm. When you would get 1,000,000 points, it would play this song and everything. So we thought that was great.
Sure.
I mean,
Who doesn't love that?
Yeah, and it took us like about a bottle and a half to get to that point where the song would come on. So when it came on, we're drunk and we're singing along and we're loving it. You know, everybody down there in the arcade was like, yeah, it was great. So, like kids' dream. But anyway, so the one night I get into it with a guy. A guy had made a scene at my house, came looking for some money. I owed him for some weed. And, I told him, I said, well, I'm going to see you out. And I did. He was up at that bowling alley. And I wound up getting into it with him. And as we were getting kicked out, like they called the cops, and as we were walking out the door, the guy said something to me. I forget what he said, but I turned around and punched him in the face. And I got arrested.
Okay.
So now I'm drunk and disorderly, plus I got a battery.
And a minor.
Yes, and I'm a minor.
Okay.
I'm 17 years old. So I go to jail. And luckily, like my uncle let me sit for a while, but he, he's played the game before, so he knew that, okay, this isn't a good place for him to be. Mm-hmm. So he wound up bonding me out. And I paid him back and everything, but I had to sell a bunch of stuff because I sure wasn't going to work. You know what I mean? I was too caught up in, life's a party. But so after that, my parents were just like, see, we told you, what are you doing? We didn't kick them out because we're bad parents. So they wound up telling me, look, we can't have you here because not only did I have my cousin, he was my age, but he also had 4 younger sisters.
Mm-hmm.
So I really didn't need to be around them either. So they kicked me out.
So now at this point, you're couch surfing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I wound up at a buddy's house.
All right.
And this guy, he lived in his basement. His parents were super cool. He lived right next to that construction site.
All right.
So he let me come live there. And basically, that's where I stayed until I decided with another couple buddies I wanted to go in the Marines.
Okay.
So we signed up, and I passed the ASVAB and everything. Everything was good. I was supposed to leave. This is back in March. This is back in like mid-March.
Mm-hmm.
And we were supposed to leave in late August. Well, I kind of changed those plans. My drinking changed those plans.
Okay.
I enjoyed driving while I was drunk.
Sure.
And
sure.
yeah,
Makes sense,
Yeah, because I'm such a better driver when I'm drunk. I swear, just ask me.
Uh-huh.
So we take I go to my house where I'm not living anymore, but I'm welcome to be there. I mean, my mom and dad didn't mind when I stopped by, but they didn't want me there when I've been drinking.
Right. Yeah.
Totally understandable. But by this point, let me add this: I had graduated high school. I was
Okay.
no longer in high school, and I kind of let about 9 months go by when all this other stuff was happening. When I went to live with my cousin, and then
Mm-hmm.
I went to live with my buddy. So now I'm there, and it's March of '96,
Mm-hmm.
and we go back to my house. It's like 11 o'clock at night. Everybody's sleeping. My mother's borrowing my grandfather's truck because her van's down.
Okay.
So in my infinite wisdom, because I think, hey, I know how to drive stick shift now,
Mm-hmm.
because I used to drive my buddy's truck out in that construction site all the time when we were drunk, because he was a pass-out drunk.
Okay.
So when he passed out, I just jump, pull him out of the driver's seat, jump in the driver's seat, and drive his truck all over the pit. You know what I mean? And
The
that's
buddy
how
system.
I taught myself how to drive stick.
Okay.
So yeah, it was great. And then
Yeah.
he'd wake up and he'd think it was great too. Once
Sure.
he realized, like, oh, all right, I'm cool. Just don't crash.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure.
But so I sneak in, we get the keys, I go out, I get the truck, we take the truck for a drive. I smash it through a fence. Now it was a chain link fence, and I didn't hit the pole, but the chain links went all down the hood of the truck, the roof of the truck, tore the bug shield off, and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, we're not going, because we were going to take a ride out to the fire trail, so that wasn't going to happen.
Okay.
So we back up, I drive it back home,
Uh-huh.
sneak the keys back in, hang
Sure.
them on the ring, lock the door, and leave, go back to my buddy's house.
Mm-hmm.
Well, next morning I get a phone call from my mom. She's frantic. She's like, George, you got to come back to the house, man. Somebody stole your grandfather's truck. I'm like, what?
Mm-hmm.
So I get back to the house, and I'm like, oh, I thought you said somebody stole it. It's
So
here.
you're playing a role.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
you're playing-
definitely,
yeah.
I'm playing stupid, because I knew I was in trouble if I didn't. So I'm like, oh, I thought you said it was stolen. She's like, well, and so I see my uncle standing there, and he's a cop at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a retired cop now, but he was, I think he just picked up lieutenant. And he's standing there, and I'm like, oh, shit. So I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, I don't know, why don't you tell us? And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, somebody took the truck and smashed it up, and your grandfather's going to kill me. And I'm like, and he goes, just stop. He said, what you're telling me, he said, listen to what you're saying right now. He said, somebody came to your house, risked breaking and entering,
Mm-hmm.
to get into your house and take your keys. They just happen to know where the keys are.
Yeah.
Get the keys. Shut the door and stuff behind them. Don't make any noise to wake anybody up. They wouldn't want to wake anybody up,
Right.
So he says, that'd be rude. I mean, I'm stealing your truck, but I don't want to wake you up.
Sure.
So, and then they go out to the truck. They take the truck.
Okay.
Take the truck out.
Mhm.
They've successfully stolen it. They
Right.
smash it up a little bit, and then they bring it back because they feel bad.
Sure.
Okay, because this is what every thief does.
Yeah,
Every
no-
car thief.
noble
Yeah,
auto thieves will
yes,
return. Yeah.
no honorable Grand Theft Auto violator would
Sure.
not bring your truck
Well,
back if
no.
he could. So anyway, so he's like, so then you're saying that this guy brings the truck back, parks it here, then goes back into your house, nice and quiet,
Mm-hmm.
hangs your keys back on the ring where he got them from, and then leaves. Just wanted a joyride.
Sure.
No big deal.
Yeah.
Okay, so he cracked the truck up a little bit, but he just wanted a joyride. And I'm like, oh my God. And she just looked at me and goes, George, did you take the truck? And I'm like, yeah.
Okay.
You know, and so my grandfather's just showing up at this point. Jumps out of his truck. He's a retired Marine, mind you.
No.
Gets right up in my face and says, okay, so here's how this is going to be. You're either getting on the next bus to Paris Island or you're going to jail. And my uncle's standing there. He's a cop, like I said. He's like shaking his head. Yeah, like, yeah, you will go to jail for this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, needless to say, I'm on the next bus to Paris Island.
So
April 2nd, I left. Yes.
Chapter 2, Red goes to Paris Island.
So I get on this bus and I go to Paris Island. And
Okay.
I'll tell you what, I made it through boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
I made it through the School of Infantry.
Okay.
And then they put me at Camp Lejeune for out in the fleet.
Sounds like you were excelling at the Corps.
I was doing great.
All right.
I'll tell you what, it was right up my alley.
Mm-hmm.
It was exactly what I wanted to do.
Okay.
But then when I get into the fleet, I thought I could drink before, but now I was a professional.
Professional.
Yeah,
drinker.
I got among some of the hardest drinkers I've ever been around.
What,
and they were
Marines?
just, yeah, I know. Can you believe it? And you act like they're stressed out or something.
It's something. Taking that oath, defending our country, first and last to know. What's the problem?
I found out what work hard, play hard meant. So I excelled. I stopped drinking beer and just started drinking whiskey. That became my thing. And I would do it in amounts, though, that were just ridiculous. I was never having fun. I was usually blacked out, and I wake up and, me and some of my buddies would be all bruised up. We'd be all beat up, and people would tell us, yeah, you guys got into it. We had to break it up. And then you got into it with him, and we had to break it up. And it was just like, oh, boy.
Right.
I don't remember nothing. You know what I mean? But I knew I was broke. We got paid every 2 weeks, and I didn't make very much, so it wasn't hard to drink it all in one weekend.
Right. So you're all the money you're earning from the Marines, it's going into alcohol, and you're
All of
drinking to black out. drunk.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I didn't know any other way. I didn't want to black out, but I was, I'm a Marine. I'm going to prove that I
Sure.
can drink as much as I want, and I'm going to stop blacking out. I'm
Right.
going to beat this blackout bullshit.
'Cause you can
know
do
what I mean?
anything.
Yeah, of course.
You're a Marine.
I'm indestructible.
Right.
So, and I was also 19. So.
Okay. Well, that's a
I mean,
big part
add
of it.
that to the the mix, and yeah. So anyway, I turned 20, and no, I turned 19. I was 18 when I went in '96, so I turned 19,
Okay.
and that was basically we wound up going to Cuba. We got put out on a mission in Cuba, and I remember we got back from that. Everything went really good. I got to shake the president's hand,
Oh.
Bill Clinton's hand.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't a real big fan of him, but the point was he's still the president of the United States. I'm a 19-year-old guy, and I get to shake the president of the United States hand.
And he's the commander in chief at that.
Yes.
For this country.
So,
So
yes.
that is
exactly.
an honor. That's a huge honor.
Yeah, that's what I thought. You know what I mean? So I got to do that, and then we get a 72-hour leave because this operation they had us on went so well.
Okay.
And so I go back to New Jersey for the 72 hours, and I get there, and, of course, first thing we do is go get beer and, liquors, celebrate. Hey, Red's home. Hey, everybody,
Right.
So it was cool, though. I liked that. They really did treat me good. They were proud of me. I actually finally did something I succeeded at and was doing well at, excelling at. And so, they a bunch of them got a hold of some cocaine, and they're like, man, we're going to get a hotel room. We're going to go party. We're going to go over to the ocean. We're going to have a good time. And I'm like, well, I can't do any of that because I got to be back. I only got 3 days leave. And if they call my number, because if they call a number from, 1 to 10, which 10 was 0, of course, and it happened to be the last number on your Social Security number, you had to go take a urine screen.
Okay.
And they didn't play around like they do out here. Like you would sit there in a chair. They didn't care if they had to keep you there a week.
You're gonna.
You're going to pee.
Right.
Yeah, you're not going to get away without going.
Okay.
So I'm like, yeah, so I can't do that. And they're like, oh, all right, well, then you just drink. We'll do all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, cool. So I wound up getting blackout drunk again. I guess I did a whole bunch of cocaine and whatever else they had there. And day 3 comes like too quick. So I don't even know what I did over this whole 3-day period.
But you're going back.
Yeah, I don't even think I had my own shoes on when I left. I really don't. I don't even know, like, half the clothes I was wearing weren't even mine. So I don't even know what happened these 3 days, but it was one of those,
I shouldn't be laughing, but it's how you tell it.
And it's the truth.
Right.
Like I said, I'm like, I had to take a bus back.
Uh-huh.
Because I wasn't driving at the time, because I had lost I forgot to include that, but I had lost my license at 16 from drinking and driving, operating a dirt bike on the street.
Okay.
I got pulled over. Well, I didn't get pulled over. I actually slid underneath the front of a cop car. I was riding it in the snow behind that bowling alley we were talking, the epic bowling alley. Yes, the infamous bowling alley. So when the cop came around the corner, I thought it was a friend of mine, and he flipped on his lights. When he did, I panicked, and I tried to turn too quick, but I turned the handlebars rather than leaning, and I slid right up to his car. Needless to say, he arrested me, and because he was on the same department my uncle was, my uncle said, look, drop the DWI, but he needs to get the operating unregistered, uninsured motor vehicle on a public roadway, because then he'll get his license suspended for a year and he can learn from that. Plus he'll get a bunch of fines. He'll have to get a job and get out and see what it's like to work for a living.
So bye-bye driver's license.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
And you got to be 17 to drive in Jersey, so I didn't have my license till I was 18, and at the point where I lost it, I was only 16. So I lost it before I even had it.
Right.
But so anyway, back to where I was at with the service. I get back, I take the bus back. I get back to Camp Lejeune, and they wind up calling 0, which just happens to be the last number of my social. So I got to go over to the company office. Like I said, I don't even remember the whole weekend. I just know I partied, and I'm like, hey, if you can't remember, it must be a good time. I mean, I'm a 19-year-old kid. Sure. Remember.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So that was my mentality. So I go over, I take my screen, and I leave. 3 months go by, getting ready to go to cold weather training, Bridgeport, Nevada. And I get called over to the company office, and my company commander calls me in and says, hey, listen, you're not going to be going. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, we're putting you over at the reject barracks. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I thought he was kidding. Right. And I didn't say it like that. I was like, sir,
Right.
And he says, yeah, you failed a urine screen. He said, for cocaine. And I said, I didn't even take a urine screen. Sure. He said, but you did about 3 months ago. And I'm like, yes, I did. And he's like, yeah, well, the results came back. And I'm thinking 3 months later, they ain't kidding. Hurry up so you can wait. You know what I mean?
Hurry up and wait.
So anyway, I have to go over to the reject barracks, which is where they put everybody who was looking for a reason to get out of the Marines. I hurt my foot. I hurt my back. You know what I mean? And some of them were legit, but 90% of them weren't. They just wanted to go home.
Okay.
And so I have to go over there, and they told me before I left, they're like, when you went home, somebody must have probably put something in your drink, right? And I'm like, no. I said it was cocaine. They don't do that with. And somebody must have put something in your drink, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. Somebody. And he said, so you're gonna get a base attorney, and we're gonna put you before NJP, non-judicial punishment. Okay. And we're going to get to the bottom of this.
So they're trying for you.
Yes, they were trying to help me. I was a good Marine. It wasn't that I was a bad Marine. I was just a bad alcoholic. Okay, you know what I mean? Which I don't even know if you could say you're bad, good. I'm an alcoholic. Right. Yes. So I'm waiting over there at this reject barracks, and I last about 3 days, and then I start drinking again. And that was the thing he told me before they left for Bridgeport. He's like, don't drink. Don't do anything stupid. Don't get yourself in trouble. We'll get through this. I'm like, okay. So about a week in, I'm completely drunk, and the duty NCO comes over to my room and knocks on the door, and of course I got to open it because he's got a key. He could have came in anyway. So I open the door. He comes in. He's like, needless. I had the bottle out on the table, and he could smell it on me. And he's like, oh, you're drinking. You're not supposed to be drinking. He's like, they told you specifically not to drink. You're in trouble because you drank, because I told them basically I told him exactly what I told you. He's like, well, how did this happen? And then when I told him, he said, somebody must have put something in your drink, so it worked out. Okay. But Anyway, I wind up, I'm like, hey, well, don't say anything. And he's like, no, I'm gonna say something. He said,
Uh-huh.
that's my duty. And I'm like, all right, well, so I said some choice words. He said some choice words. We got into it, and I beat him up pretty good. And hitting an NCO when you're a non-rate and the service is like, a regular civilian hitting a cop,
Oh,
especially when you're in the wrong. You know what I mean? Like, he
yeah.
didn't provoke it or anything. I did. Basically, he was trying to do his job, be
Okay.
an honorable Marine, and do
Yeah.
his job, tell the
Yeah.
truth.
Sure.
So, anyway, so I get in trouble for that. And it was like, okay. So when they get back from Bridgeport, they told me, they're like, look, just, we're done with you. We're cutting you loose. You got a really bad drinking problem. They said, you're a good Marine, but you're a terrible alcoholic. You need help.
Okay.
So when you get out of here, you need to check with the VA, see if you have any benefits, because they wound up giving me a general separation.
All
They didn't
right.
give me a bad conduct or anything like that,
No dishonorable.
which I had earned, right? Which I
Right.
had earned because I was out of control. But
I mean, the Marines went the distance with you.
yeah, they
They
did.
really went the distance.
They really did.
Yeah.
So I have no complaints.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They did their job. But so they told me, though, they said, you're really young. They said you're not even out of your teens yet, and basically, like, if we were to give you a bad discharge, you wouldn't even be able to be like an attendant at a gas station. Like, you would be
Yeah.
done.
Right.
And I mean, not belittling at gas station attendants, but I'm just saying, they said, you couldn't even get one of the more available jobs that are out there.
Right.
You
Yeah.
basically shunned. So I'm like, okay. So I get, that I wind up getting my discharge, and at that point, my father's plant that he worked for in New Jersey had closed down. They closed the doors. There was like some problem with a union contract or something.
Okay.
So he got relocated to Indiana while they waited for another facility in Jersey to open back up with his position.
All
So
right.
when I get out of there, I come to Indiana,
Okay.
and I stay with my parents, of course, and they're pretty disappointed in me.
Well.
And no, I hadn't told them about the cocaine.
Okay.
I just told them I got separated for a battery, on a NCO,
Okay.
and that I had some other drinking incidents.
Okay.
Because that was something I also left out mistakenly. I had gotten a DWI another time when I was home on leave
Ah.
in New Jersey, of
Okay.
course, on my vacation. But I wound up coming back. I was actually late coming back because they were going to hold me. And usually there, they lose your paperwork for a little while. You sit, even though it's a misdemeanor charge, they'll make you
Right.
sit a couple weeks, kind of give you a lesson, give you your charge, and then kick you out.
Okay.
So the Marines wound up having my duty NCO, or not duty NCO, my company commander actually had to call the jail, the Ocean County jail, and tell them, hey, listen, you have one of our Marines in there. We need him back.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this was actually right before that trip to Cuba. That's why they needed me back. See, we didn't even know we were taking a trip to Cuba because the operation hadn't happened yet.
Okay.
So they had to release me, and they gave me the DWI, and they gave me my fines and everything, but they did it real expedited,
Okay.
and so it wasn't my first offense in there.
All
So
right.
basically, I used that to embellish the reason I got kicked out. So that way I didn't have to tell my parents, well, I went home and did a bunch of blow, and I blew
Right.
my chance in the service, So,
So you arrive in Indiana. Has it occurred to you yet at this point that I've been discharged from the Marines? I lost my license. Parents kicked me out. Maybe I have a problem.
no, that
Okay.
didn't occur to me.
All right.
No.
All right.
I mean, I thought the problem was everybody else.
Okay.
I drank fine.
Yeah.
That's how you act when you drink, right? I
Right.
mean, look at all the movies, Animal House. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
you can watch all these movies and people go crazy all the time, and it's okay.
Mhm.
I mean, everybody I knew had at least one or two DWIs, so I mean, I fit right in.
Sure.
This is just the way it is. It's
Yeah,
just the way it is. That's what we would tell each other. Hey, it's just the way it is.
And I got this.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
got this. So, anyway, I move in with them in Indiana. I wind up getting a job with my mom at a local convenience store. I meet this girl and quickly get her pregnant. And just a few months later, my dad's job opening came. So they were moving back to New Jersey.
Okay.
Well, I that is one thing I was very am firm about, and I pride myself on. As I always said, if that ever happened, I would always stick around for the kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Even if me and the girl didn't get along, I'm not gonna leave my kid. I want to be, connected to my son or daughter.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they leave, I stay. She winds up moving in with me.
Okay.
Her and I kind of hit it off, and we have our first son. And her and I started really getting along, and things were really working out. And I was working in a factory. She was still working at the gas station, at the convenience store, and we were making it. We were doing good, And so we had another son, and then we a few years later had another son.
Okay.
So by this point, after about 7 years of being together, in that amount of time, I had gone to jail 3 times for a total of about 3 years, and it was all alcohol-related charges.
Okay.
2 of which were DWIs. So by this point, she's like, "Look, George, I stood beside you through everything, and we got 3 children together. It's been 7 years. We're either going to do this or we're not."
Okay.
And so we get married.
All right.
And shortly after, I went to jail again, and then, shortly after that, I had this accident. I was just coming off a house arrest, and or I was still on it. I was going to be off it in less than a month, and I wound up getting drunk and driving over to the next town because I didn't have the part that I needed. I was fixing a pond light for a friend of mine.
Okay.
So I was driving over to the next town to find the parts, and I don't know if I stopped at a bar or if I bought a bottle and brought it with me, but I do know I tested 0.357 on the blood alcohol level, and that was a blood test because basically what I did was I got so drunk that I must have passed the cop. Cop tried to pull me over, led him on a high-speed chase. Now I got 3 or 4 of them behind me. I got a helicopter was en route. I guess I had taken them quite a distance.
Okay.
Blew a front tire, the front passenger tire. It was in a 2002 Santa Fe. It was my ex-wife now.
And your initial
But-
objective was to go get these parts to
Yeah.
repair.
Yeah.
You end up in a high-speed chase.
I wind up in a high-speed
Okay.
chase. So I'm coming around this corner, and I guess there were 2 oncoming lanes of traffic and then 2 ongoing lanes of traffic. And I guess I pulled into the oncoming traffic, and there were 2 cars side by side, and I hit in the middle of them. And I know I was doing 97 miles an hour at one point because that's what it said in my paperwork.
Okay.
I don't think I was doing that fast when I hit the cars, but I was ejected from the vehicle out the driver's side window, and my feet were the only thing that stayed in the truck. I don't know if they got caught up in the seatbelt or something. I really didn't pay attention to details.
Okay.
But I was laying out on the road, my head on the road and everything, and I was dead.
You were dead.
They pronounced
died.
me dead on arrival.
Okay.
And I came back to life briefly, long enough for them to call a lifeline in, and they put me on the lifeline, and I guess I died again.
You died twice.
Yeah. So we're on our way to Methodist, and I wind up coming back to life.
Okay.
And they said, if this guy dies again, we're just pulling the plug on this. We're going to let him die, because by then he'll have no brain function left anyway.
3rd time was the charm.
Yeah. Yeah, literally.
Literally.
So we get to the hospital, and I guess they called my family in Jersey and said, "Look, if you ever want to see your son with a pulse again, you might want to come out here." They said he can't talk, he's not responsive, he's just we're keeping him alive.
Okay.
He's on a
You're on a
breathing
machine.
Yeah, and they said if he flatlines again, we're pulling it.
Okay.
So you might want to get here quick. So my family comes out. My ex-wife and my 3 sons are there, and I guess they were taking me back for another CAT scan or some kind of, I don't know what they were doing, but they were taking me back in the back for something. And, I don't try to embellish things. I don't try to maximize things or make things sound better than what they are. But I'll tell you this. I heard a voice, and it sounded as familiar to me as my mother's voice.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
But I've never heard this voice before in my life.
Totally an unfamiliar female voice, too.
Yeah. That's what it sounded. I couldn't tell whether it was female or male, but I related it to female because
Okay.
it sounded as soothing and as comfortable to me when it was being spoken as my mother's voice sounded to
Okay,
me
so
when I
a
was very
voice.
young. Yes. It said he must have bigger things for him.
Okay.
And I woke up
Uh-huh.
and I went to get up. I had to pee. So I went to get up, and I guess the doctors thought I was going in a final seizure,
Mm-hmm.
and that I was, because I didn't have enough brain function to breathe on my own. How am I going to get up and know I had to go to the bathroom?
Right, right.
So then, they were holding me down, and I remember kind of struggling around, and I was like, I gotta piss.
Uh-huh.
And the one doctor said, hold on a minute. He said, what'd you just say? And I said, I gotta piss. And he goes, let him up.
Okay.
And I'm like, so they let me up, but he held on to the back of my shirt. When I tried to get up off the gurney, my legs gave out from under me. I didn't know it, but I was laying in that gurney for 9 days, unconscious, on a breathing machine.
9-day coma.
Yeah. And so I make, like, he holds on to the back of my shirt. I make my way over to the toilet. I'm like real shaky, but I peed, and he puts me back on the bed and is wheeling me down the hall. And I'm looking at this nurse is looking at me like I had 3 heads or something. You know what I mean? Like she couldn't believe what she saw.
A modern miracle.
Yeah.
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 Back from
There's
the
no other
dead.
way to say it.
Yeah.
And so they bring me into the room and where my family is,
Okay.
and my sons and my ex-wife. Well, she was my wife at the time, but she's my ex now. That's why I keep referring to her like that. But my parents are in there. My 2 younger brothers are in there, and they're all like super happy. They're like, oh my God, you're back. I can't believe it. You're alive. And they're like, saying my name and coming over to me and kissing me and everything. And I'm like, what is going on? You know what I mean? I had no idea at this point. And this nurse that was looking at me all weird comes into the room, and she's standing at the foot of the bed. And I just keep noticing her. I don't know what it was, but so I look at everybody and I'm like, so what happened? And they're like, okay, well, you were out for like 9 days. And I'm like, yeah, but what happened? Why am I here? And my ex-wife started telling me, hey, you were in an accident, and you died in the accident, and like they brought you came here and you just came back to life. And I'm like, okay. So after she explained to me, about the cars and about the high-speed chase and about everything else, I'm like, plus I was still on house arrest at the time that I did this, so that was considered escape. I'm like, instead of looking at it and being grateful that I'm alive and that my family is this happy to see me, even though I just did what I did, and I've repeatedly put them through hell over the years with my drinking and my drugging and my stupid behavior while doing those things, I get mad. And I'm like, great. Why didn't you just leave me dead? Why? And I'm like, I guess I'm yelling at the doctors, my family, and God. Basically feeling sorry for myself because now I got to pay the consequences for my actions. That's how self-centered and how weak and how self-pityful I really was.
But why did you want to stay dead?
Because then I wouldn't have to go to prison.
Okay.
Then I wouldn't have to pay the fines.
Gotcha.
Then I wouldn't have to go through what I had to go through to pay the bill on what I did. I wouldn't have to man up and pay the consequences for what I did.
So you just come back from dying twice. You come out of a 9-day coma, and your mentality at the time of this miracle that was given to you, a third, fourth chance at life, you're all upset because now you got to be responsible.
Yeah.
And go to prison.
I got to pay consequences.
Got to pay consequences.
Yep.
That's your mentality at the time.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and no, I'm not proud of it, but I'm honest
no.
about it because that's what this is all about.
Yeah.
I want to put this out there so other people that may have been unfortunate enough to be in the situation I was in at that time, who had the same results, that felt some kind of way too ashamed to admit it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm admitting it because it is what it is.
Well, that's why we're here.
Exactly.
That's why we're telling
sharing
your story.
Experience, strength, and hope.
Yes.
So anyway, this nurse finally speaks up and she goes, you got a lot of nerve, buddy.
Yeah.
She goes, you were dead. She said, I don't know who or what you believe in, but you better be thanking them. She said, because you weren't supposed to make it. They came out here and they brought their suits and their dresses to bury you. And this is how you want to repay them? This is how you show your appreciation? She goes, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. And walked out of the room. And nobody in the room said a word because they were like, I know what they were thinking. She's dead right.
You got checked?
Oh, yeah, I sure did. I didn't know what to say because she was right.
What do you say after that?
And I look at everybody and their faces are just like disgusted. Like, I can't believe this is your reaction.
Right.
So anyway, you'd think that'd be enough to quit drinking. So I didn't. So anyway, I wound up having to go to jail. I wound up having to go to prison for a little while. I get out of prison and find out that about I was in prison for about 14 months. I wound up doing some classes and or not classes. Well, yeah, it was classes. It was auto body. Wound up getting a year shaved off, and I got some other time shaved off for my good time. So
Okay.
I wound up doing 14 months on like a 3-year sentence.
All
And
right.
I get out, only to find out that my wife at the time was seeing a guy for the past 6 months, and he shows up at the door about 8 hours after I show up to see my wife and kids because she didn't come visit me,
Uh-huh.
not once when I went to prison. She
Okay.
just, I guess she had been seeing that guy, and that was going to be her way of separating herself from me. So when I was getting out, she would have been away from me long enough to feel comfortable with it and tell me the truth. Well,
Okay.
not the case.
Right.
I got home, and she was wanting everything to work out between us and everything. Well, this guy shows up at my door, and I let him in because I kind of figured nobody would show up knowing that. Okay, this woman and her children, her husband and their father just got home. I don't want to interrupt this. They haven't seen each other for 14 months. Maybe I ought to give them some time. Well, this idiot shows up and comes in and basically makes it clear what has been going on. So I split his head open.
Okay.
I punched him in the side of his head and put him to the floor, one shot, split him behind his ear. And I don't take that back. I don't regret it. I don't think I would have done it different. I don't think I should have. This is a woman I was with for 18 years, have 3 children with. Maybe I was away from her for a while, but even any Bible I've ever read said that when you mess with a man's wife, the wrath of the husband, there's no measure to it. I mean, I can't put it in the perfect terms, but anybody who knows the Bible knows exactly what I'm talking about right now.
Okay.
You don't break the institution of marriage, But anyway, so without getting self-righteous here, because it's actually kind of funny. I really get along with the guy now. Actually, her and I wound up getting a divorce, and those two got married. And but so after I had hit this guy, he never wound up calling the cops or nothing. He left, like after he was able to get up and stumble out the door. And she basically denied the whole thing about being with this guy. She said he was crazy, whatever. And then I found out it was true, and I left. I wound up moving into a friend had a empty pond house for me to stay in, so I went to live there. And then those two started seeing each other again.
So it's
And
safe
then
to say at this point your
yeah,
marriage
I
is
was
over.
done. Yeah, it was
Done.
over with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I wind up continuing to drink,
Okay.
and I get another DWI while I'm on parole now. And I wind up having to go to the county jail where I was picked up at. And it only was a C misdemeanor because it had been so many years prior my other DWI that I did 3 months in the county and then 2 months in prison because when I got there, the board didn't even want to see me. They're like, "You're here for a C misdemeanor." They're like, "Well, you quit drinking."
Right.
And
right.
that was it. They wouldn't even see me. They actually had my counselor tell me this. So then I think I'm getting released from prison after about 5.5 months. And here comes the other county where I had the accident, picks me up at the prison gate. So they take me in for another 5.5 months.
So did you get busted back because of the parole violation? You picked up the C misdemeanor on a parole violation?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah. And I had to do the time for the C misdemeanor,
Okay.
which was like 90 days.
All right.
So it was 6 months due 3. So I wound up doing maxing that out.
Yeah.
And then they took me to prison.
Okay.
And I did 2 months there because waiting for the board. And then the county that I got in the accident in came pick me up, and I did 5.5 months there. So anyway, I was getting ready to max out at the county where I had the accident, and I wound up reaching out. A bunkie of mine told me about a place that he was going for recovery.
Okay.
So I wound up, reaching out to the person in charge and spoke with them about doing the same thing, and they gave me a chance at it. And I actually went through the 3-month course that they had, and
Is
it
this
was
a
great.
recovery house?
Yes.
Or is this a
Yeah, it was a
detox-
halfway house.
A halfway house. Okay.
So I wind up doing real well, at the program, but I really wasn't doing real well at the recovery because towards the end I was drinking sometimes at the job I had. I was working for a tree service, so
Okay.
I'd sneak a few drinks, get back to the halfway house. But it was in time to where even if they did give me a breathalyzer, it would have been, it wouldn't have showed up, because I would drink it in the morning and they wouldn't give breathalyzers till night, so I was good.
So you had the routine down.
Yeah,
I
oh
can,
yeah.
I can get
Yeah,
away with
well,
it
I'm an
here,
addict,
and then yeah, well,
I mean, I know what I'm doing, you know what I
Right.
mean, when it comes to that.
You got this.
Yeah, I got
Yeah.
this. That's exactly how you put it. But anyway, so I get through there and I get the certificate and everything looks good. So the courts leave me alone. Basically, I was cut off of parole and probation, everything. I was good.
Mm-hmm.
Now I was off paper. And I go back to this pond house and literally drinking myself to death. And so I go back to this halfway house. But I had been seeing a girl, and she, of course, was using with me. I had a good job. I was a supervisor at a glass factory. So basically, I go back to this halfway house and tell them I want help because I did want help, but I didn't want to follow their rules. So after about maybe 14 days there, I wound up leaving because they're like, look, you keep going back up, north to go see this girl, and this girl is toxic for you. She's bad for you. You already told us you drink with her, and you're still going back there all the time. Okay, you're passing your breathalyzers and your screens, but we still think she's toxic for you. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to stop seeing her. So I leave. And
You showed them.
oh, yeah, I showed that.
Yeah.
So not even 9 days went by, and I had to leave. I didn't even kick her out. I just took all my stuff. I had an 81 pickup at the time. Threw all my stuff in my truck and left.
Okay.
I was heading towards Jersey.
Huh? All right.
And I'm thinking, a good friend of mine actually talked me out of going to Jersey. Told me, he said, you come back here, you stay. And he said, and you go get help again.
Okay.
So I go to the house. I go to the halfway house the next day, and basically beg them to let me back in.
Okay.
And they said no.
Oh.
They said, you were here that second time, and you did great the first time, but you come back the second time, and you didn't want to follow the rules, so no.
Okay.
You go find yourself another place to stay,
Mm-hmm.
and then if you can do that for a couple of weeks and stay sober, come back and see us. So I leave, and I'm like halfway through the next town heading back up north to go back to where this girl is at, because now I'm going to show them, I'm going to drink at them. You know what I mean? I'm going to go back to that, and then I'm going to blame it on them. Well, if you were to let me in, I wouldn't be, that kind of mentality.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar.
So
with that.
I'm heading that way, and I get a call from who was the director at the time, says, where you at? And I told him, and he said, come back to the house. And I said, why should I? And he hung up.
Oh.
So just out of spite, I didn't even really care what he had to say. I was just so mad that he hung up on me. I turned around and drove back to the place because I was gonna, let him have it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I was gonna let him know about himself.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? So that's what kind of brain damage I got. Okay. So anyway, I go back there. And I show up and I go into the office and I'm pumped. I'm ready to let this guy have it. And they're like, sit down. And I'm like, I could just feel the vibe in the room. I'm like, yeah, I probably better just sit down. So I sit down and they're like, okay, so here's what we got for you. You come back here, you're on restriction the entire time you're here. You don't go home on the weekends. You bring us a copy of your paycheck stub, and you get a copy of your time card, because they still had those Fred Flintstone time cards at the glass factory I worked at. And they're like, so we're going to make sure the hours on your time card match up with the hours on your paycheck stub.
So you're just allowed to go to work, meetings. That's it.
And that's it.
That's it, man.
That is
no wiggle room.
No wiggle room.
Okay.
Because they provided food at this place.
All
so, that was in your fees. So they're like, and the first time you ask us for any kind of extra privileges, you might as well have your stuff packed and you're out. And I'm like, okay, wow. But they gave me another chance.
Right.
That was the point.
Right.
They gave me another chance. So here's where I'm going to go with this, okay? I even after that, I wound up staying sober, including the 3-month time period that I was there this time. And then they actually made me a house manager before I left. They knew I really had nowhere to go. And I didn't like the glass factory I was working in because it was just drugs and
Yeah.
drinking. And, I mean, and you're going to have that anywhere you go,
Anywhere
but this
you
was
go.
kind of to another extreme. It was a
Okay.
very small place, and it was like literally like 8 out of 10 people were getting high and getting drunk. And I didn't have a tolerance for it anymore,
Right. Yeah.
because it just mirrored the way I was when I was like that. And I don't want to be like that no more. So anyway, I wound up staying there for another 15 months after I graduated as a house manager on the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went and worked at another facility for a few months as a tech. And then I got into debt collecting. And then from there, I went to where I'm at now, which is highway construction.
Okay.
But after I gotten away from doing the recovery, being a house manager and being a tech and staying in the meetings and doing what I was supposed to be doing, I got back with the girl that I was with before I wound up getting that DWI after I got out of prison and violating parole and going back. And for about 6.5 months, I was able to be with her without drinking. And I don't blame her for it, but let's just put it this way. A sober person and a not sober person staying together, the one who's sober will get drunk before the one who's drinking will get sober.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
just how that works.
Yeah.
So anyway, I wound up relapsing and I went back out for about 7.5 months. I almost had 4 years. I was 2 months away from a 4-year token.
Okay.
And
You got 4 months of sobriety, or I'm sorry, 4 years of
4
sobriety.
years of sobriety, yes.
Okay.
And well, 3 years and 10 months.
Okay.
And then, so I go out for about 7.5 months and I come back. And luckily, it was because her and I had gotten in an argument, and her mom owned the apartment that we were about to move into. And because we had the argument there, the neighbors got sick of hearing us yelling, so they called the cops. Cops show up. The mother said, "Look, this is my place. He's not on the lease. He needs to go."
Okay.
I didn't do anything that would, I didn't really commit an offense. All we were doing was arguing and disturbing the peace.
Yeah.
So the cop, was giving me a ride, dropped me off at the hotel, the local hotel there, and just told me, he's like, "Look, I can't tell you what to do, but I'm going to tell you, you don't need to leave here tonight, because if you do and I come back, you're going to jail."
So the
And it
cop
was,
takes you to a hotel.
yeah, and it was a cop I knew. He was actually a CO in the jail like years before when I was coming in and out.
Uh-huh.
And he asked me, he said, "I haven't seen you in a while. Where you been?" And I said, "Sober." And he goes, "You're drunk right now." And I said, "Yeah, that's why you're seeing me again."
Uh-huh.
And he goes, "Yeah, you don't see the common denominator here?" And I'm like,
What do you say?
didn't
about
really,
it?
I didn't really
Yeah,
want
what
to
do you
talk
say
about
about
it. I'm
Right.
like drunk, just got kicked out of my girl's house. I'm on my way to a hotel, you know what I mean? And I'm
Not
like,
in the mood.
right. But I'll tell you what, I got on my knees that night and I prayed to God. I said, if this union between me and this girl is supposed to be, then bless it. If not, then please get me out of this nightmare.
Yeah.
Well, that next day, my son gave me a ride back up to my old place that I was getting ready. I had already let the lease run out because I was moving into that place with her.
Okay.
And I go back up to that place because I still had like 2 weeks left on the lease.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I stayed there and I started talking to my sponsor again, started going to meetings again, started getting around like-minded people again, and really kicked up my prayer life. And basically went back through my steps with my sponsor, and that was back on May 23rd of 2021.
Okay.
So I'll have my 9-month sobriety on the 23rd of this month.
All right.
So for the last 9 months, I was blessed with a chance when I got up here after I had put in a couple weeks at a facility and got back on my feet, got the chemical effects wearing off my brain. I met up with a guy that I went through that halfway house with when I got sober for them 3 years and 10 months. And he told me, he said, "You know what, Red?" He said, "You got good sobriety." He said, "Okay, you went back out, you messed up, you had a slip,
Sure.
just like the book says." He says, "But I'm opening a transition house, and I want you to be the house manager. So guess what? You're it." He's like, you didn't lose the 3 years and 10 months you had.
Right.
He said, "You just went out and learned a good 7.5 month learning lesson." I said, "Yeah, I did." He said, "Well, how do you feel about it?" I said, "I feel my sobriety stronger now because I found out a lot more about myself by that relapse than I knew before I did.
Okay.
Before I did, I was going dry. I was going stagnant. I was miserable as I would have been if I was drunk.
Not drinking, but miserable.
Yes.
Okay.
I was dry drunk,
Dry drunk.
you know. But then I found out that no, it definitely was worse going back to drinking
Well, yeah.
than being a dry drunk.
Okay.
But anyway, I learned a lot from it. I'll tell you what, like I said, I got back around. I started praying regularly again.
Right.
Okay. I started working my steps regularly again, steps 10, 11, and 12, like I'm supposed to be.
Right.
I started calling my sponsor regularly again,
Mhm.
and I started going to meetings regularly again.
Okay.
And since then, I've had a better life now in this last 9 months. Even though some of it was hard, getting back around the people who were like, oh, you were Mr. AA Nazi, pushing it on everybody about how they should be and how they should be reading the books. You were working in a halfway house and you were working in a rehab center, and then you're telling everybody how to be sober, and then you relapse.
Right.
I'm like, okay, so we could either stand here, judge me, and pick me apart, or we can just, look at it as, okay, I took my lumps and I'm back and I'm alive, so I'm glad you're glad about that. But,
Right.
or you would rather criticize, but
Kind of
and
one of
I
those,
get it.
How far the mighty have fallen.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was just like,
And that
look,
makes it so much easier to accept the fact that you made a mistake.
Yes.
And you're willing to.
yes,
Yeah.
and you know what though, it made me a lot more tolerant of other people.
Probably humbled you too.
Sure did.
Okay.
Oh yes, it did. Oh yes, it did. When I stood up and took that 24-hour token again after almost picking up my 4-year token in the same room, like in a room with not all the same people, like because the turnover rate in the addiction field, but and unfortunately it's that way. But
it is.
yeah, it was very humbling to take that 24-hour token. But a lot of people, even people I didn't get along with, when I had that 4-year, just about 4-year stint of sobriety, I get along with real well now.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to see me humble myself and take that token, there were a lot of people to follow that, because I think they had been relapsed for a while. They just didn't know how to say it.
Okay.
They were scared about how they would be judged in them rooms and how people would mistreat them because of it. And I think they were just ashamed, and what they need to realize is this isn't about that, man. This is not about that. This is about love and tolerance, unity. We're supposed to be here for each other.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, that's something. And so that takes it. I've covered all my bases about how it was, what happened, and what it's like now. And I'll tell you what it's like now. I'm 44 years old.
Okay.
Okay. I live in a transition house.
Okay.
I sleep on a legitimate jail bed. It is a steel jail bed with a steel board underneath a single mattress. And I have 2 pillows, and I've got 2 small blankets that I keep on that by choice. And I don't think I've been this happy since I can remember.
Okay.
I don't think I've had this much joy in my life since I can remember. I've got the trust and the support and the love of my 3 sons. Even my ex-wife supports me. She was so upset when she found out I relapsed. She was crying. She was chewing me out on the phone. That she had never seen me so happy and at my best like I was when I was sober. And when I was helping other people is what she said. And that really hit home with me, because it just showed me these people never turned their back on me. It was me turning my back on me. And I'll tell you, nothing has ever worked for me with quitting drinking and quitting drugging than the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And my higher power is God.
Okay.
Just as described in those steps, power greater than yourself. As long as you got one and it ain't you, then you can do this program and you can have a better life. And I'm proof of that.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. So what keeps you going day by day other than the 12 steps?
Sponsorship.
Sponsorship.
I sponsor guys.
Okay.
Even some of the guys that I've only had one guy fire me. All my other sponsees kept me. I even got a sponsee who's got 9 years sobriety, and he still kept me. Even after I was honest with him about my relapse, he said, "You're still red." He said, "And you haven't changed a bit." He said, "You might have slipped." He said, "But you're a little bit," he said, "you seem like you're a little bit more firm in your recovery now than you were before you relapsed." He said, "So why would I fire you? I'm keeping you as a sponsor." Then he invited me out to a meeting.
Well,
So it was like, that's the big thing, is working at this transition house and
mhm.
being able to, it's like I sponsor all the guys there, and actually sponsoring the guys. I just got another sponsee tonight.
Yeah.
I don't say no.
No, you
I
shouldn't.
don't say no. And I
That's
sure
amazing, though.
am not going to be apprehensive about freely giving away what was freely given to me, because you can't keep it if you don't give it
This
away.
is true.
And I'm not here trying to sell AA. It's not like I'm getting paid. I'm just saying it for what it is, because you know what? It is an honest program. And
Uh-huh.
honestly, I've reached a point in my life where I actually love myself, and not in an arrogant way,
Mm-hmm.
not in a prideful way,
Right.
but in a way where I trust myself, I believe in myself, and the way that I know how to heal myself is by helping extensive help with another alcoholic, just like it says in a big book.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I work with these sponsees and I see them getting it, and I watch their life change from what it was, just like mine,
Mm-hmm.
a train wreck,
Mm-hmm.
into something beautiful like mine, nothing's better than that. Nothing.
So you're offering hope to the
Yeah.
hopeless.
Yeah, I guess you could say
Yeah.
that. Yeah, sure.
You're helping the hopeless gain
Sure.
some hope.
I'm being a vessel of God to these people that need
Okay.
Him.
Yeah.
That's all I am. They need God. They don't need me. I just happen to be the human vessel He travels through. And I'm blessed to be that.
So since you're blessed and you now love yourself and you trust yourself, would you say that now you're would consider yourself a leader of men?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I would.
Okay.
But I know my leader's God.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason I stand and don't fall. And when I fall, I'm able to stand again.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be here right now.
Well, I mean, it's in your cards. I think you cheated death twice.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the story of just
Literally.
Yeah, literally. I wouldn't say cheated though. I
No.
would say you were handed a second, third chance, and you made good use of it. You know,
Finally.
well, you know, sometimes it takes us several times
Yeah.
before we maybe. I don't think we really get it right. We could just strive and try and keep going and count our victories
Absolutely.
and forgive ourselves our
Absolutely.
defeats.
Yeah. That's it. Forgive ourselves.
Forgive ourselves.
Period.
Yeah. And that's not an easy task
No.
at all.
No, that's not. It's definitely not.
So as of now, you're how many more months sober, clean now? Is it
I will have 9 months
9
sobriety
months?
on the 23rd of February.
February
Which,
23rd.
yes, February 23rd. My goodness, this year is already flying
It
by.
is,
We're already,
right?
oh, wow.
Right. And if somebody listens to this like 5 years from now, it's 2022 currently. This
Yeah,
is being
yeah,
recorded.
yeah. I probably
So,
should have mentioned that.
so you're very close to 9 months. You've got yourself a job, a
Yes,
good job
a good job.
that you're excited about,
Yes,
and you know your skills on highway construction
yes,
and working with cement, your hands and your muscle and all that. You're now a house manager of
yeah,
a sobriety house.
yeah,
You got people counting on you. You got your
yeah.
3 sons. And you just said a minute ago you could not be happier.
I couldn't. I really couldn't. I mean, now maybe someday I'll find a significant other to share it with,
Yeah.
but if that happens, then that was meant to happen. It's like I was told. I mean, and yes, I got to coin this phrase because it's such a beautiful, powerful
Go ahead.
phrase
Sure.
that if it's not, if it's not God's will, if it's not meant to be,
Mm-hmm.
if it's not God's will, you can't force it. If it's God's will, you can't stop it. Tell me that's not a beautiful thing.
That's
You
a
know
beautiful
what?
thing.
You know what I seen the other yesterday?
What's that?
As a matter of fact, my ex-wife posted it on Facebook, that same saying.
Yeah.
I was like, man, that is so cool that our children get to, that I know that, and she knows that on both sides, even though we're not together, we co-parent,
Mm-hmm.
and our sons are grown now. They're 23, 21, and 18, so they're
Okay.
not children, but it's nice that they get to see positivity from both sides now,
Right.
you know. And for me to see her post something like that just shows me she's still deep in the God,
Mm-hmm.
and as well as am I,
Mm-hmm.
and that way when our sons get around us, we can rub some of that off on them, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great thing to hear. That's
Yeah.
a great thing to hear. I'm going to ask you one question, but it is kind of twofold. If somebody's listening to this and they know and they love somebody who's struggling with alcohol, drugs, both, that person who would like to try to attempt to reach their loved one, what kind of instruction or advice would you give that person?
Just tell them that you love them
Tell them that
and
you
you
love
want to see them have a better life,
them. Okay.
and that you'd like them to listen to this podcast maybe,
Mm-hmm.
so they can hear what one guy, myself, started off as, did to himself, experienced, hit his bottom,
Mm-hmm.
and managed to crawl out of that and wound up on his top. Maybe just let them listen to it,
Okay.
because every alcoholic and addict needs sobriety.
Yeah.
But if they don't want it, you can't force it.
You can't force it.
You can't force it.
And that's a tough thought to handle.
Yeah.
Because you want that person. So, I mean, I remember people just so desperately wanted me just to stop, and I just wouldn't. I didn't have the problem. And nobody was going to force me to do anything.
Well, I didn't mention this in my lead because I don't know, just that's the thing when we pray before these leads.
Yeah.
Whatever God puts on my heart to say is what I say.
Mm-hmm.
So my lead, let's say, may change with the instances I mention during the lead, but the lead never changes because my past doesn't change.
Right.
You know what I mean? My
Yeah.
past will always be my past, but it'll always stay the way it was because you can't go back. There's no rewind
No, there's
button.
no
You know what I
delete
mean?
button
Yeah,
on
you
that.
can't go
No.
back and switch it.
Nope.
But I do understand that, and I know that some people feel like they want to force recovery on a family member, they want to force recovery on a friend, and you can't force it on anybody.
Right.
Unfortunately, I found that out firsthand. Back in 2017, my brother committed suicide.
Okay.
He was addicted to what is supposed to be the cure, methadone,
Mm-hmm.
and he was drinking tequila with it too. But I guess everything got to be too much for me. Just like between having whatever problems in life he had
Mm-hmm.
and having the mental cloudiness that this high-powered drug that they give people that they think people need. See, you won't die if you withdraw off heroin,
Okay.
okay? Which is what they give you methadone for,
Mhm.
which is what they give you Suboxone for, which is what they give you Subutex for.
Okay.
Now, you'll die from withdrawing from benzos or alcohol without some kind of sedative if the usage was great enough to when you just quit without any kind of weaning down.
Okay.
They'll kill you.
Yeah.
Heroin won't. It's just very painful.
Mhm.
It's just very uncomfortable. I mean, you'll have extreme diarrhea, you'll be vomiting, you'll have, pains and muscle pains and joint pains and stuff like that, but you will not die from it.
Okay.
If you do die while you're going through the withdrawals, it's from a pre-existing medical condition that you might have, maybe severe dehydration or something, but the actual withdrawals will not kill you.
Mm-hmm.
But yet they make these super high-powered, what they call them, the antidopes, to take you down off of this, when all they're doing is saying, that's just like saying, hey, man, look, I could stop you from drinking alcohol. Just take this cocaine. Well, okay, we're going to stop you from taking heroin. Just take this methadone.
Okay. So it's like getting off the street dealer and going to Big Pharma
Yeah,
to take
basically now you're
switching
legally
dealers.
getting high. Yeah,
Okay.
now you're legally getting high.
Yeah.
And I watched what it did to him.
Mhm.
28 years old.
Mhm.
And basically was so clouded by this crap that they call a fix or a cure or whatever they want to call it.
Right.
If it was a cure, you wouldn't be taking it over and over and over for years in a row, or however the clinics work.
Mm-hmm.
But as you could tell, I'm not a big supporter, and I have a reason not to be. I've seen the results of what that stuff does to you.
Mm-hmm.
And whether he's abusing it or not, I don't know any heroin addict who doesn't abuse whatever mind-altering substance you're going to give them to replace their heroin.
Right.
Period.
Because if one makes me feel this good,
Yeah.
what's four going to do?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I drank myself an alcohol poisoning I don't know how many times over the 44. Well, I started when I was 13, so you figure what's it been? 31 years I've been was doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, up until, so let's minus out the 4 years and 9 months. So we'll say, what, 28 years?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, no, 20, I don't even, 29.
20 plus years.
20 plus years.
Yeah, right.
God, I'm not a mathematician if you can't tell, especially anyway. But what I'm saying is, I guess, it sounds more like I'm criticizing now, but I'm not. I'm just being real. I'm just being honest.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen what the so-called antidote could do. I used to, soak when I was in prison. Like Suboxone was the biggest thing going around. I knew guys who were dealing heroin in prison and dealing cocaine and everything else, and they were going broke. The guys who had the Suboxone were making the money.
Okay.
What we would do, and I was doing it myself because it does the opposite for me. It really hypes me up.
Mm-hmm.
And they had the weights where I was at in prison. So before I would go out on the weights, I get a little piece of this Suboxone, the dissolvable, and I would take one of their toothpaste caps. I would put hot water in the toothpaste cap, drop this little piece of dissolvable Suboxone in there, mix it around with a toothpick, snort it up my nose. About 5 minutes later, I'm ready to go out there and lift the world.
I'm
You
sure.
know what I mean? So, if this is the antidote, then why are people getting addicted to it? Why are people killing themselves over it? Why is it putting them in a severe depression? Why are they actually breaking into houses to get it?
Mm-hmm.
If it's so, effective and it's so non-harmful, then what are we doing?
Right.
What are we doing?
No.
I mean, alcohol is legal. But look at how many people die in DWIs every year.
Right.
You can't justify it.
No.
That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Just because it's legal don't mean this stuff ain't dangerous.
It's true. Just because it's illegal doesn't mean it isn't dangerous. And unfortunately, I don't even have a solution or an idea of a solution to it.
I don't think anybody does. They're making too much money. That's
Yeah.
why the opioid crisis, they'll call it a crisis, but they still make opioids.
Sure.
Maybe they tightened up the reins a little bit, but there was a time where I was getting so much opioids because I had back surgery.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time where I was getting 4 different opioids for the same back surgery, but from the same doctor.
Yeah.
That I probably could have put an elephant to sleep with this stuff. I probably could have killed the thing with it. You know what I mean? But, I mean, it's you're making money off it. That seems to be the common denominator of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a shame.
It is.
A lot of people are dying, so people can get rich.
What would you say to the person who maybe found this broadcast? They're addicted. They're drinking themselves to death, and they're got a huge drug problem. Or they've realized it. What advice would Red give to that person who's listening, who just listened to your story?
I would suggest. I mean, I can't really give them advice because I'm not like some recovery guru. But the
Right.
thing is, I could make a suggestion and
Okay.
do what I did. It worked for me.
Scratch
Reach
the
out to the
advice.
local halfway house.
Uh-huh.
Find out, whether they got an empty bed, because that's usually all it takes. That's all it takes with us. That you can provide a clean screen,
Mm-hmm.
even if you don't have a job when you come in. You got 2 weeks to get one and pay us, get your rent paid up and get yourself on your way to recovery.
Right.
I mean, that starts immediately, but reach out to your local halfway house,
Okay.
and see what kind of options you have, and don't take one mind-altering substance to replace another. It just doesn't, it's
Trading
not going to
bad
work.
for worse.
Even quitting cocaine by smoking weed, it's still a mind-altering substance. You are not going to think clearly while you're on it.
Right.
And you are going to make some bad decisions, which usually is to take other drugs along with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't replace true sobriety. If you look it up in Webster's dictionary, sobriety is the absence of all mind-altering substances.
All. Not,
All.
not replacing one for
Right.
the other.
Whether it's a legally prescribed prescription drug, or it's a naturally grown herb, or it's synthetically, you know, uh, engineered chemical. It doesn't matter. If it's mind altering, you're not sober if you're taking it. I don't care if it's Suboxone, Subutex, Methadone. If it's altering your mind and causing you to be addicted to it, you are not sober.
Okay.
Let me repeat that. You are not sober. Period. You're still getting high. Just off something different than what you were getting high off as your drug of choice. Period.
I got to agree. So recovery, it's a lot of work. 12 steps, your higher power, a sponsor, meetings. That's it. For the rest of your days, if you want to keep it.
And though it sounds like a chore when you first start, because it kind of is, as you get deeper into it and things start falling into place in your life, and you start having a spiritual experience, and then you have your spiritual awakening, it's amazing. Because when them promises come true, they're not just 9-step promises. There's promises all throughout that book, all throughout them steps, and all throughout the rest of your life. Just because you get through your steps, you always got 10, 11, and 12 to work. But you've got life. You're able to live another day. A lot of addicts and alcoholics weren't. So just be grateful you're waking up in the morning.
Every day is a gift.
Yeah.
And every day lived clean and sober is golden.
I think so.
I think so. Red, I'm grateful. I'm so grateful you decided to come on
So am I.
this broadcast and share that very personal, intimate story of your life. And it's our hope that somebody hears this and can relate, or they hear their story or part of their story, maybe want to seek out some help for themselves, or possibly even somebody who knows somebody, loves somebody, they're just watching them die. They want to save their life. Say, you don't have to say a word, just listen to this. Listen to this guy, Brad. Listen to this guy's story. You know.
It won't be me directing them.
No.
Because I'm not the one talking right now. I'm talking. You're hearing my voice, but we prayed before this show, and I truly have faith in God, and He's talking through me. So, sorry out there, folks, but not sorry if any of what I said offends you. Then maybe it's because you know it's talking about you, and there might be some changes you need to make. Otherwise, nothing I've said should be offensive to anybody.
No. Why is the truth offensive?
Well, unless you're big pharma and it's hurting your pocket.
Well, you know.
I'm not real concerned about that.
I'm not concerned.
I won't lose any sleep.
No, not a bit. Well, Red, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I was wondering if you'd want to close us out with a prayer.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
All right. God, in Jesus' name, thank you for this opportunity to reach out to people and be a vessel of you to them. May we all receive the knowledge of your will for us and the power to carry that out. I ask this in Jesus' name. Thank you, God. I love you, God. Amen.
Amen. Now, if you've heard this podcast and it relates to you in any way, or somebody you know, we would rather them listen to it or discover it through attraction than promotion. It's the goal that I myself have to spread the word of hope. That's why I bring these great individuals like Red on board, and there will be more guests in the future. Just no celebrities, just everyday people to share their stories, and maybe somebody out there could relate to it and find some hope in those. So please, if you know somebody out there suffering from alcoholism, drug addiction, both, overeating, gambling addiction, any type of activity or substance that's causing somebody's life to become unmanageable, and you're just watching it happen, suggest you're not alone to them. They may hear their story. Send them the link. Direct them to YouTube. Direct them to any platform. So we'll be back soon with another guest, another story. If Red's story maybe didn't hit home, maybe somebody else's in the future will.
Absolutely.
So again, Red, buddy, my brother, I appreciate you for sharing your story with everybody.
My pleasure.
Okay, and with that, I'd like to close this out. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you again soon.